The smell hits you first. Not the history books, not the museums, not the documentaries with their sweeping orchestral scores and CGI reconstructions. The smell: roasting meat, burning cedar wood, river mud baked dry under a sun so brutal it feels personal. Sweat, incense so thick it coats the back of your throat, animal dung from the livestock markets 2 streets over. And underneath all of it, the faint mineral scent of the Euphrates River, moving slow and brown just beyond the city walls. You don't arrive in Babylon with luggage. You arrive with nothing. No phone, no money, no language, no name they'd recognize. Just your body, your eyes, and 7 days to survive, or not, inside the most powerful city on earth. It's 575 BC. Nebuchadnezzar II sits on the throne. The empire stretches from modern-day Iraq to Egypt, swallowing civilizations whole and digesting them into Babylonian culture. The city itself holds somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 people, an almost incomprehensible number for the ancient world. Nothing on the planet compares to this place, not yet, not for another century. This is week 1, and today is day 1. Day 1. Arrival. The first thing you notice about Babylon is the walls. Not one wall. Walls, plural. The outer wall is so thick that 2 chariots could race side by side across the top of it without either falling off. Ancient accounts suggest the fortifications stretched for miles in either direction, a city designed not just to be defended, but to be impossible. To look at those walls from the outside road, packed in with merchants, refugees, soldiers, and pilgrims from a dozen different nations, is to understand immediately why Babylon didn't fear armies. Armies feared Babylon. You enter through a processional route. Ahead of you, impossibly tall, glazed in lapis lazuli blue, so vivid it looks supernatural, stands the Ishtar Gate. The blue is not paint. It's fired ceramic tile, thousands of pieces assembled into a mosaic of lions, dragons, and bulls, marching in eternal procession. The lions represent Ishtar, goddess of war and love. The dragons belong to Marduk, the chief god, the Lord of creation, the one who made humanity from the blood of a slain god specifically to serve the divine order. Nobody explains this to you. You just know, the way you know a courthouse when you walk past one. The architecture speaks authority before a single word is exchanged. Inside the gate, the sound doubles, triples. The processional way, a wide ceremonial street running through the heart of the city, is clogged with people. Vendors sell figs, sesame oil, barley bread. A scribe sits cross-legged in the shade of a wall, pressing a reed into a damp clay tablet for a merchant who can't write his own contracts. A group of women in dyed wool robes move purposefully through the crowd, none of them making eye contact with strangers. You understand nothing anyone says. Akkadian, the administrative language of the empire, sounds unlike anything your ears have ever processed. But you can read the city anyway. You can read the hunger on a child's face near the grain market. You can read the authority in the posture of a temple official in a white robe walking through a crowd that parts for him automatically. You can read the wariness in the eyes of the man standing next to you, newly arrived, scanning the street the same way you are. You're both strangers here. He's a trader from Judah, probably. The deportations happened decades ago. Jewish merchants and craftsmen were common in Babylon by this point, some of them prospering, some of them still dreaming of home. You won't exchange a word that either of you understands. But for one moment, in the shadow of the Ishtar Gate, you look at each other and acknowledge the same enormous fact. This place is real, and it is overwhelming. Day 2 and 3, the city at work. Babylon is above everything else a city of paperwork. This sounds absurd until you see it. The empire runs on clay. Every transaction, every land sale, every marriage contract, every loan of barley, every slave purchase, every adoption agreement is pressed into a clay tablet, witnessed, sealed with a cylinder seal that rolls a unique signature into the wet clay, and filed. Thousands of tablets a day. Entire buildings exist just to store them. The economy is sophisticated in ways that genuinely astonish. There are institutions functioning like banks, temples, and wealthy families that accept deposits, issue loans at interest, and facilitate long-distance commercial transactions. A merchant heading to a distant city doesn't need to carry silver. He can carry a tablet, a kind of receipt, a promise, a financial instrument, and collect equivalent value at the other end. The concept is not so different from a check. It's 575 BC. The markets are stratified. There's a section for textiles. Babylonian wool cloth was famous across the ancient world, traded as far as India. A section for metals, a section for grain. You'll see Egyptians, Persians, Phoenicians, Aramaeans, Elamites. The empire's commercial gravity pulls merchants from every direction. Prices are posted, not on signs exactly, but the information moves through the market the way it always has, through negotiation and reputation and the collective memory of everyone who trades there regularly. If you're smart, on day 2, you attach yourself to someone. A Babylonian household that needs labor. You can carry things, you can fetch water from the canal. You don't need language to communicate willingness to work, and in a city this large there is always work for willing hands. The household you find yourself in is middle class by Babylonian standards. The head of household is a textile merchant. His wife manages the domestic economy with a competence and authority that surprises you. Babylonian women could own property, conduct business, appear in court, and in some cases, manage significant commercial enterprises independently. She is not a figure in the background. She runs this house. You sleep on a reed mat. The food is barley stew, onions, garlic, leeks, fish from the Euphrates, occasional mutton. It is repetitive and not particularly exciting, but it is filling, and you are grateful for it. Day 4, the Temple Complex. If you're finding this journey through ancient Babylon as fascinating as I am, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell. We do deep dive historical immersions like this every week, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. The Asagila is the temple complex of Marduk, and it is the spiritual and political center of the known world. At its heart stands the Etemenanki, the ziggurat. 7 stepped levels of sun-dried and fired brick rising toward a sky so blue it hurts to look at. Etemenanki means house of the foundation of heaven and earth in Sumerian. Some biblical scholars believe this is the structure behind the Tower of Babel story. Standing at its base, you understand why the story survived. The thing doesn't look built. It looks grown, like the earth itself pushed it upward. You cannot enter the inner sanctuary. That space belongs to priests and the god, but the outer courts are public, and they are packed. People have come to pray, to make offerings, to settle disputes before temple officials, who function simultaneously as judges and religious authorities, to leave small clay figurines as petitions to Marduk, to buy amulets from vendors who set up near the gates. Religion in Babylon is not a private practice, it is civic infrastructure. The gods are real, they are present, they have preferences and appetites, and maintaining their goodwill is a collective civic responsibility. If the gods are pleased, the city prospers. The floods are manageable, the harvests are good, the enemies are repelled. If the gods are displeased, if the rituals are neglected, if the king fails in his duties, if the city becomes corrupt, disaster follows. The logic is not metaphorical, it is administrative. Nebuchadnezzar himself presents his rule as an act of devotion. His inscriptions, copies of which appear on clay cylinders buried in the foundations of the buildings he constructs, describe him not as a conqueror, but as a builder, a shepherd, a servant of Marduk, tasked with making the god's house worthy of divine habitation. The military campaigns that extend the empire, the deportation of populations, the extraction of tribute, all of it is framed as the fulfillment of divine instruction. In the shadow of the ziggurat, that framing does not feel entirely cynical. It feels like the organizing logic of a civilization. Everything connects: the king, the god, the city, the empire, the cosmos. Babylon is not a place that exists despite the universe. It is the center of it. Day 5 and 6, Danger and Survival. By day 5, you've learned something essential. Babylon is beautiful and Babylon is brutal, and both of those things are completely true at the same time. The legal code is explicit and merciless. The laws of Hammurabi, carved into a massive black diorite stele and displayed publicly, establish punishments with a symmetry that would be elegant if it weren't so violent. The death penalty appears frequently. Slavery is legal and common. The social hierarchy, free citizens, freedmen, slaves, is enforced with the same bureaucratic efficiency as commercial contracts. People at the bottom of that hierarchy have almost no protection and almost no recourse. You witness a public dispute near the grain market on day 5. A merchant accuses a porter of stealing. The accusation alone is enough to trigger a process that could end in execution if the wrong official decides to make an example. The crowd watches with the focused attention of people who understand that legal proceedings are also performances. They establish publicly where power lives and what it costs to challenge it. You keep your head down, you stay useful, you stay invisible. But on day 6, you see something that reorients everything you've observed. In the household where you've been working, the merchant's elderly mother dies. The mourning that follows is immediate, physical, and communal. Neighbors arrive without being summoned. Women sit with the body through the night, singing laments in voices that carry through the walls into the street. Food appears from adjacent households. The textile merchant, who has been nothing but businesslike toward you all week, cries without any attempt at composure, openly in the middle of the courtyard. Grief looks the same here. It looked the same 2,600 years ago, in a city that no longer exists, spoken in a language nobody has spoken natively for 2 millennia, and it looks exactly the same. That's the thing that stays with you, harder than the blue tile of the Ishtar Gate, or the shadow of the ziggurat, or the smell of the river at dawn. The empire, the bureaucracy, the gods, the walls, those are Babylon. But the man crying in the courtyard, that's something else. That's the thing that doesn't have a civilization. That's just the thing underneath all civilizations, permanent and unchanged, waiting for you every time you get close enough to see past the grandeur. Day 7. Leaving. Your last morning in Babylon begins before sunrise. You climb to the roof of the household, a common practice. People sleep there in summer to escape the heat, and you watch the city come alive from above, the canal boats beginning their slow movement, the first cook fires appearing on rooftops, the ziggurat going from black silhouette to warm orange as the sun clears the horizon, a dog barking somewhere, a baby crying, the distant sound of a hammer from a metalworker's shop that apparently never entirely stops. You have 1 week of observations, none of which you can take home. No notes, no photos, no recordings, just the memory of what it felt like to be a stranger inside a civilization at full power, to see how it moved, how it fed itself, how it worshipped, how it punished, how it grieved. Here is what you know now that you didn't know before you arrived. Babylon was not ancient to the Babylonians. It was now. It was traffic and commerce and paperwork and family dinners and neighborhood gossip and the specific exhaustion of a city that never quite stops making noise. History flattens it into an aesthetic. The hanging gardens, the ziggurat, the gates, because that's all that survives the distance. But the distance is a distortion. The city was full of people who had no idea they were living in what we would one day call ancient history. They were just living, and maybe that's the most useful thing a week in Babylon can teach you. Every civilization that has ever called itself eternal, every empire that built walls thick enough for chariot races, every city that planted its gates in lapis lazuli to announce its permanence, has eventually become exactly what Babylon became: a ruin, a name in someone else's history books. Her subject for a video watched 2,600 years later by people who can barely imagine the smell. If this week in Babylon left you thinking, drop a comment below. I want to know, which day would have been the hardest for you? Day 1 trying to communicate, day 4 at the temple, or day 6 watching grief cross 26 centuries without changing a single thing. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a genuinely good time. Hit subscribe, leave a like on this video, and I'll see you in the next civilization.